Today I'm here to bring you another installment of Disturbing Campfire Stories from the Walking Dead universe. This is the series where I highlight the shorter stories from the franchise that are still interesting, but don't necessarily warrant their own entire video. If you're enjoying this type of content, be sure to hit that like button and drop a sub to see more videos like this. On August 27th, 2010, the world as we knew it fell as the dead began to roam the earth. During the initial chaos, Isabelle Carrier, her boyfriend Quinn, and sister Lily had escaped the city of Paris together and made their way to the French countryside. Isabelle wasn't the greatest person in the world, making her living as a professional thief while struggling with drug addiction. But if there was one thing she cared about more than anything, it was her sister. When pulling up to a gas station along their travels, Lily would grow sick, revealing she was actually 7 months pregnant but feared telling her, expecting anger. As Lily begins to experience stomach pains, Quinn would pull Isabelle aside and suggest leaving her behind at some sort of hospital, as where they were going, they would have nothing of that sort. This was now life or death, and to him, Lily was just going to slow them down. He was asking for trust as he had always sworn to take care of her, which Isabelle would initially appear to believe, giving Quinn a hug as he goes to take a phone call. But to Isabelle, family trumps everything. When their parents died, Lily was all she had. No boyfriend could make her abandon her sister, especially in her time of need. So when Quinn's back was turned, she and Lily would steal his car with the key she lifted from his pocket during their hug, leaving him stranded in the soon-to-be French wasteland. Searching for help along the road, Lily would begin to panic, believing something to be wrong with her baby. Spotting an ambulance up ahead, the sisters would pull up asking for help, but unfortunately, they would get a taste of the challenge this new world brings as a pack of freshly turned walkers would attack. The two would escape with their lives, but Lily's pain persisted, leaving the two driving with nowhere to go as day turned to night. Thinking outside the box, Isabelle would pull up to the Abbey of Saint Bernadette, a monastery occupied by a group of nuns and a priest who agreed to take them in as Lily's pain grew harsher. But unknown to all, bad would soon turn to worse, as it would be discovered Lily had been bitten by one of those things at the ambulance. Nobody knew the severity of a bite this early into the outbreak, so regardless of the growing infection, they had a baby to deliver, as the stress of Monument Day had triggered an early labor. Isabelle would calm her sister with a childhood song, promising to look out for her baby if things were to go wrong. But the question of who the father was still lingered in her mind. But as she goes to ask, Lily begins screaming in pain as the baby was now on its way, whether it was from the infection or birthing process altogether. Lily would not survive that night, blacking out and dying within minutes while the priest and nuns prepare a C-section. Isabelle would cry over her body, but while holding her hand, Lily would begin to squeeze back. This was no miracle, however, as her eyes would open, but nobody was home. A wheezing creature now lied on the table wearing Lily's face, but Isabelle knew this was no longer her sister. Despite the horrific circumstance, the baby would be born by a post-mortem C-section on August 28th, 2010. Although Lily's reanimated corpse still thrashed around on the table, Isabelle would view her nephew as a miracle, and so would the nuns, naming him after Saint Laurent as they believed the newborn to be destined to one day deliver humanity's salvation, having been born from death. The nature of Laurent's birth is what would one day set in motion the events of Daryl Dixon Season 1. Isabelle would remain at the Abbey for the next 13 years, changing her old ways and becoming a nun to protect Laurent until the day came to deliver him to his destiny. But along the way, the answer to a long-standing mystery would be answered as Quinn would be discovered alive in Paris, revealing himself to be the father of the boy as he and Lily were having an affair before the world fell. It's clear this story was not only about faith, but secrets as well. Years leading up to the outbreak, Donald Okafor was a pilot and major for the US Air Force, best described as a level-headed, courageous soldier, accompanied by his wife Estelle, a Marine who presumably shared Okafor's mindset based off his recalling of events. When the dead began to overwhelm the authorities in their campaign to take back the major cities, the military were ordered to execute civilians outside the dedicated safe zones, an order which triggered the Second Civil War. A battle fought in Pennsylvania where the state's National Guard defended against the remaining US military to protect the cities of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, as the rest of the country was left to die. In a last-ditch effort to contain the hordes of undead in the large metropolitan areas, the military was ordered to drop napalm on every major city in the country on September 10, 2010. One of the pilots responsible for carrying out a portion of this order was Okafor himself, as he would fly over to burn the cities before his wife, accompanied by thousands of Marines, would move in to liquidate any remaining survivor or walker once the flames settled. But after hitting both Atlanta and Los Angeles, both he and Estelle couldn't bear to see another city die by their hands, feeling the weight of all those innocent lives on their shoulders as they made their way to Pennsylvania next. From what Okafor implies to Rick, Estelle herself inspired him to defect, wishing for him to assist the Pennsylvania National Guard in the rebellion. So, in what they both viewed as a necessary sacrifice, Okafor would drop napalm on Lincoln Financial Field, which housed over 4,000 Marines, including his wife, waiting to move in to liquidate the city. The leader of the National Guard's rebellion, Major General Beale, made the decision to sacrifice Pittsburgh in order to equip Philadelphia with enough soldiers to defend from the remaining military forces, recalling all personnel and leaving the city to burn. Philadelphia was left standing with minimal damage to the main infrastructure, but the cost was great. Thousands of people had to die for thousands to live. What came out of the chaos was an organized city and military that would live for years into the apocalypse. And among the top of the food chain was Okafor, who would be recognized by Beale for his part in defending the city and rewarded through his rise in rank. Regardless of your position on the CRM, it's hard to deny Okafor was a major contributing factor to its success. This story, of course, is about sacrifice. Okafor's actions could easily be seen as controversial, as, from what we learned from Pittsburgh, Beale was just as willing to let the innocent die as the military was. But regardless, Okafor believed he made the right choice, and I'm curious to hear if you guys agree with that or not in the comments down below. The months following the outbreak were not kind to the average survivor. Some would attempt to hold on to their humanity, while others would embrace the anarchy. What began as a group of around 30 survivors scavenging the Washington, D.C. area quickly devolved into a group of plunderers, as a man named Owen and his allies would lose themselves to the wasteland, luring innocent survivors into traps before killing them for supplies. Once turned, these plunderers would use the fresh walkers to reset their traps, before repeating the cycle once again. Owen was an extremely unstable man, believing humans to have descended from wolves, and was able to make the other plunderers buy into his philosophy as well, naming themselves after what they believed to be their ancestors. But despite his threatening nature and strange beliefs, Owen was rather smart, eventually working up to raiding large camps of survivors. They were remorseless with their attacks and appeared to enjoy every minute of it. Owen in particular seemed proud of their actions, leaving calling cards at the scene of their crimes with messages such as "Wolves not far," and for their individual victims, W's carved into their foreheads. as they believed what they were doing was actually freeing survivors from the wasteland. This delusion would extend to Owen carving a W into his own forehead, solidifying he truly believed in his views. But interestingly, we see other wolves only mark themselves in blood, indicating to me the scar might represent some sort of hierarchy, as only few do this. They were a pack, but don't be mistaken, Owen never genuinely cared about any of these people. He simply used them as tools for his own survival. But of course, like most leaders of this nature, overconfidence would soon get the best of them. They may have been successful taking on a gated community once before, as we see with Noah's Town Shire-Wilt Estates. But when it came to the Alexandria safe zone and its survivors, they would meet their match. Although many civilians would be cut down by the attackers, other survivors would fight back, particularly Carol, who was able to infiltrate and kill a large portion of the wolves, while Rick took care of the stragglers on the road. We see firsthand just how sick these people were, as Alexandrians lie gutted in the streets following the attack. But what's interesting, Owen wasn't killed in the chaos, instead taken prisoner by Morgan, believing there to still be a person somewhere deep inside after having a brief encounter on the road. Most would think Owen could never be redeemed, giving into his animalistic instincts that way, especially Carol, who strongly disagreed with keeping the man prisoner. He never even seemed to really care, knowing all his allies had been killed. But as we see in the season 6 episode No Way Out, Owen shows he may not be too far gone after all, as although he uses Denise as a hostage to escape imprisonment, he goes out of his way to save her life from the horde when he had a clear shot of escaping. Getting bit on the arm, Owen would stare at the doctor in shock, but Denise would promise to save his life by amputation if he got her to safety. And she meant it. But after nearly fulfilling his end of the deal, Carol would gun him down, leaving him to die and turn while the horde marched around him. The wolves have got to be some of the most interesting side villains we've gotten in this series. They were brutal in their ways, but Owen shows us there may have still been hope for those who appear too far gone. And since we don't get to know any of the other wolves, he acts as a sort of vessel for the whole group. I know a lot of people find Morgan's all life is precious stance annoying, but if Owen were to live past these events, we may have gotten a chance to see a little more of Morgan's perspective. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. I really appreciate you guys sticking through this series, and if you have any suggestions for more stories to include in the future, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching, folks.